What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to share my top 5 favorite Akimbo builds to use in Modern Warfare 3. This is a video I decided to make since as I was doing my pistol gun guides for several of those gun guides, I didn't share an Akimbo build simply because I generally prefer using certain pistols without Akimbo, but many people wanted the Akimbo builds, so I decided to just put this all together in one video, and like I said, share my top 5 in the game. A couple of these you've probably already seen in previous gun guides, but without further ado, let's just dive right into this, and let's start it off with one you haven't seen yet. This is my Renetti Akimbo build. And with this one, we're using the X10 sidearm L400 laser. You're going to see that a lot on my Akimbo build, simply because it's straight up the best when it comes to balancing both minimum and maximum hipfire spread. And on top of that, it's not a visible laser beam to enemy players, which is great. After that, we've got the MLX short competition barrel, the 50-round drum magazine, and this one may seem a little overkill, but when you compare it to the downsides of these slightly smaller magazines, they're really not that much different, especially for an Akimbo build where we don't have to worry about aim down sight time at all, so that's why we went with the 50-round drum here. Then of course we do have the Akimbo attachment on here, and finally the sonic suppressor. And the reason I'm using this one is partially to stay off the radar, that's always a nice benefit, but on top of this, this will boost our range values a little bit, and the only downside is to our aim down sight speed, which again, we don't need to worry about. So with this build, we get a reasonably tight hipfire spread. It's not the best spread you're going to be seeing in today's video, but it's not bad. A big one you want to be focusing on is our hipfire max, because this is what's going to happen as you start firing your gun. And this is 3.2 degrees. Also, our time to kill potential right up close and personal if we're hitting all of our shots, this is 144 milliseconds, which is very, very fast. However, the downside with the Renetti is since it's a burst gun, if you don't get that kill within that first burst as you're firing both guns at once, that time to kill will increase pretty sharply all the way up to 306 milliseconds. And that's actually one of the reasons I didn't share this Akimbo Renetti build in my gun guide. I simply prefer the consistency of using this gun as a single gun. But then again, it is still a very solid Akimbo build, and I did want to make sure I was sharing one for you guys in today's video. I almost forgot to mention on this, one of the huge upsides with this particular build is our sprint out time. This is just 39 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 64 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time, and both of those values are ridiculously good for this game. So there we go, that's the first one, that's my Renetti build. Honestly, not my favorite out of the 5 I'm going to be sharing today, but still a very solid build for you to try out. Next, let's get into my WSP Swarm Akimbo build. And with this one, unlike the pistols, this has its own aftermarket part, which is the Akimbo brace stock. So we're going to be using that one combined with the Marauder grip, the 40-round mag, the Schlager ULO 66 laser, and then finally the S37C DL breacher device. And with this one, our minimum hipfire spread is literally 0 degrees, which means the first bullet that you fire, as long as you're standing still, that will always go directly to the center of your screen, which is a nice upside. And then even after that, as you continue firing, it only increases up to 2.5 degrees, which is still an extremely tight spread. And therefore, accuracy-wise, while in Akimbo, this is a very solid gun. However, the big downside with this one, using it in Akimbo, is it does reduce our rate of fire per gun. But in saying that, we still get a great time to kill potential at 180 milliseconds up close, and that will only increase up to 270 milliseconds if you're missing a shot or two, and that's still a very highly competitive time to kill, so it's quite forgiving as well. We've got a pretty decent sprint out time, not as amazing as the Renetti, but 144 milliseconds is not bad. And just in general, this is definitely one of my favorite Akimbo builds to use, very easy to use, very straightforward, and definitely deserved a spot on my top 5 list. Next up, getting into number 3 on my list, this is my Akimbo Snakeshot build with the TYR. And this is a build I shared not too long ago in my gun guide, and it is quite good. With this one, we're using the CS15 Scarlet mounted laser, the ZU16 heavy long barrel, Ur's Fury trigger action, and also, of course, Akimbo and the Snakeshot ammunition. And with this, you've got a pocket shotgun in each hand, and it is very effective if you can get yourself right up close and personal. While there is a slight pre-fire delay at 60 milliseconds, that's not so bad if you're killing in literally one shot, meaning your effective time to kill with that one shot is 60 milliseconds. Our sprint out time, while it's slightly worse than the base version of the TYR, it's still incredible at 52 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 104 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. And on top of that, we've got a super tight hipfire spread for our minimum, and minimum is what matters the most with this one, since we're generally just trying to fire that one shot, or at least one shot with each gun at the same time, and you're not going to be spamming this quite as much as the other builds. And the great thing about this is we've got a 2-hit kill potential, so technically a 1-shot kill potential if you fire both guns at once, out to 9.2 meters, which is very impressive even for a primary shotgun in this game. So there we go, that's just a recap of my Akimbo Snakeshot build. Next, let's get into a build that a lot of people were disappointed I didn't include in my gun guide for this. This is my Core 45 Akimbo build. And I'll admit, I totally overlooked this one initially, simply because I really like this gun as a single gun. It's actually my favorite secondary weapon to use as just a one single gun, and therefore I didn't even bother playing around with it akimbo. It's just so good on its own. Why would I bother? Well, it turns out it is a very solid option in akimbo as well. So with my build, I've got the X10 sidearm L400 laser, the XRK V21 heavy match trigger. This is the one that increases our fire rate up to 600 rounds per minute, so not the fastest possible fire rate, but this trigger also helps us with hip fire a little bit, so that's totally worth it. And then finally, outside of the akimbo attachment itself, we're using the sonic suppressor to increase our ranges a little bit while staying off the radar. And with this one, we have an excellent hipfire spread. Our time to kill potential at point blank range is literally 100 milliseconds if you're firing both guns at the same time. Since it's a 3-shot kill, and therefore you only need to fire both guns twice, and you can even miss one of those bullets, and you'll still get that insane 100 millisecond time to kill. And the nice thing is, even if you drop all the way down to a 5-shot kill, we're still getting a great time to kill potential at just 200 milliseconds. Top that off with the fact that we have a very good sprint out time at 83 milliseconds, and that makes for a pretty deadly combination with this particular build. Now again, I just want to be clear, I generally still prefer using the Core 45 as a single gun. This is just an alternative for you if you're looking to use akimbo and you really want that super close range dominance without having the versatility of being able to challenge people at longer ranges. And with that, we've got one last setup I want to share for you guys, and this is actually my favorite akimbo build to use at the moment. This is my WSP Stinger Akimbo build. And it is the same build I shared in the gun guide for this, but we're just going to do a quick recap again. And also a correction, I did make a slight mistake in my gun guide, and I wanted to make sure I was correcting that here. So with this, again, we're using that X10 sidearm L400 laser, the HISS short light barrel, the S37C DL breacher device, the 32-round magazine, and then finally the akimbo attachment. And with this one, we've got an excellent hipfire spread for both our minimum and our maximum, so it never really gets too wide on you, and you can stretch out your ranges surprisingly far with an akimbo gun at least. The one correction I want to make here that I didn't catch while I was creating the gun guide is just like with the WSP Swarm Akimbo, our rate of fire per gun is reduced when using this gun in akimbo. By default, a single WSP Stinger will fire at 1,000 rounds per minute, whereas in akimbo, each of them are going to fire at 596 rounds per minute. So a very significant reduction to our rate of fire there. However, we still got an amazing time to kill potential at 201 milliseconds up close, and that can increase all the way up to 403 milliseconds, but that's more so if you're really trying to stretch the ranges out beyond the effective range. More often than not, it's going to kill in roughly 200 to 300 milliseconds, which is solid and it is quite consistent. Also with this, our sprint out time is ridiculously good at 30 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time, and I'd say more importantly, only 48 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. That's practically unheard of in this game. And on top of that, because we're using that barrel, we increased our range values by 34%, which is a nice increase. And this just makes for, at least in my opinion, the best akimbo build that you can use currently in Modern Warfare 3. Now, of course, that is just my opinion, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What is your favorite gun to use in akimbo in Modern Warfare 3 currently? Is it one of the guns I've got on my top 5 list, or perhaps one of the other guns? I do want to make a note that I did check out the Modern Warfare 2 pistols as well. I tried them out in akimbo, and while you can definitely make some of them work, none of them in my experience were better than these 5 builds that I shared in today's video. So that's why you're not seeing any Modern Warfare 2 ones here. In my opinion, they're just simply not as good. If you enjoyed this video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.